Well, good morning, dear Ty, dear beloved Rainbow community, and dear friends. Uh, Please excuse my furry friends having a shake in the background. Thank you for this opportunity to offer a small talk slash workshop and some insights into inclusiveness for the disabled and neurodiverse community. Um, I'd just like to offer a short self-description for visually impaired practitioners. I'm a 50s white person in a male form. I have a shaved head and brown eyes. I wear black rimmed glasses. I have a slightly rounded face. Today I'm seated in front of a deep red or maroon curtain. I am wearing brown monastic robes and am a lofty 5'7" tall when standing, though quite often a lot shorter when seen in my wheelchair. So, for the workshop, I invite you to experience it from a place of comfort, a place of mindful attention and consideration. So, I invite you to take up a position that supplies you with support. And for this, you may need to lie down or sit on a chair with legs or with wheels. All is okay. So, my name is Sibling Yonten. My pronouns are they, them. The talk workshop itself will come to you from a place of direct experience rather than any academic prowess. I'm not a very studious monastic, much to the rib poking of some of my fellow monastics. I share a body with disability and neurodiversity, and we will rely deeply on my practice and day-to-day experience to offer this talk. I also rely on the Buddha's teachings and the teachings of Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh, and those from sisters and brothers and siblings of the Plum Village tradition, alongside of various public sources. Recently, I've been asked to join PV that's Plum Village UK's germinating seedling, that is as an inclusivity hub. This role is as a representative of for disability and neurodiversity within our community. And this growing circle holds a motivation to become a central hub for affinity groups and marginal communities, creating communal connection to the wider Sangha. Now, I do not deem to speak for all practitioners that experience the disability. This is inclusive of hidden disabilities and neurodiversity, moment by moment in their daily lives. But I do hope to offer some insight to inclusive practices that I utilize myself. And additionally, this is offered as an invite or a support for deeper understanding and expanded awareness of inclusiveness for these community members. So far, I've found this position as a joyful experience, combined with moments and accounts of deep suffering as various practitioners and monastics have contacted me on their experiences. So these terms of neurodiverse and disabled are umbrella terms, and I recognize that there are many, many conditions that I know nothing about. Personally, I find the clearest possibility for information about a disability or a neurodiversity and a person's condition is, if it's appropriate and safe to do so, just ask the practitioner who shares a life with that condition. Though we avoid labeling people and do not mention a person's disability or neurodiversity unless it is agreed upon by the person and is relevant to the situation. But more on that a little later on. So, what is neurodiversity? Uh, I'm no wordsmith, so here I rely on an external source, this time from the Neurodiversity Week's website. And this is what they say. When it comes to inclusion, neurodiversity refers to a world where neurological differences are recognized and respected as all other human variations. Dependent on how our brains are wired, we think, move, process information, and communicate in different ways. Many people in our community use neurodiversity as an umbrella term used to describe alternative thinking styles such as dyslexia, DCD, dyscalculia, dyspraxia, autism, and ADHD, but these are just a few examples. Regardless of labels, neurodiversity is about recognizing those who think differently. And no matter whether you are a school, a university, or a rainbow organization, you can benefit from different thinkers. Approximately 15 to 20% of the population has a neurological difference. Instead of labeling people with deficits or disorders, when we use the term neurodiversity, we take a balanced view of an individual's unique strengths and challenges. And they say also that the many challenges neurodivergent people face are more to do with the environment and the systems they are placed in, often designed by a majority population. So, according to the UK government's National Disability Strategy of 2021, there were approximately 14 million people within the UK itself that experienced disability in some form, which is an apex of over 20% of the population. In the USA, that expands to 26% of the population. So if we expand this out further, according to the World Health Organization, there are approximately 1 billion people around the world that live with some form of neurodiversity and disability, making that around 15% of the global population. So with my rudimentary math skills, if we see the world's population of coming up to 8 billion, around 15% of that, and within that 8 billion, approximately 500 million people are or identify as being Buddhist practitioners. So the 15% of the 500 million means that there are around 75 million disabled Buddhist practitioners, which when I took that on board sort of blew my mind a little bit. So with that in mind, can we increase accessibility, inclusion, and interbeing nature of us all, for us all, within the Buddhist practitioner world? So for this, as I see it, we need inclusive practice. From the Surrey University, they described that disability is always a bit of a stigmatized subject, and many people like to euphemisms instead of the word disability. However, many people find it quite offensive and emphasizing. When it comes to neurodiversity, it becomes even more complicated, as not all neurodivergent people consider themselves to be disabled. As a side note, instead of neurodiversity, I personally prefer neurospicy, or spicy brain. Though all aspects of this is also in my mind that we see life through a different lens. I recognize that it may be uncomfortable talking to a person about neurodiversity, and that's for both parties. But I feel it's through engaged contact that we may well come to understand in what manner access in the Buddhist canon, possibly Dharma doors, to the practices and doors open to the Sanghas may be accomplished. Though be aware that some people may not wish to share that they live with a disability or a neurodiversity, and that is down to personal preference, not wishing to be treated differently or gaslit. They may feel that their disability has no relevance to them being able to practice within the Sangha. I feel it prudent at this point to mention within our interactions with fellow practitioners that many neurodiverse people are very proficient in a skill. Now, this skill is termed as masking. It's something that we can recognize in the atypical world, but is can be a lot more detrimental in the neurodiverse world. So what is masking? Well, the masking is where a neurodivergent person has trained themselves to act in a more neurotypical way. And the detriment of which I spoke earlier is a result of practicing this skill of masking through the day-to-day is that when in a safe environment, i.e. at home or amongst family, friends, there may be a need to release our pent-up pressure, which it sometimes is deemed as the Coke bottle effect. Though I must mention at this point, there are other carbonated drinks available. This extra pressure can cause extreme stress, depression, and also can exacerbate some conditions. There may be instances when these pressures of a situation become overwhelming. This could be resultant in what is commonly known as a meltdown, but is in reality that person becoming overstimulated. And as a neurodiverse person, I know that use of self-soothing or stimming or walking, etc., can ease those Coke bottle effects. Also that we may use stimulation toys or fidget toys, sometimes they're called, or stim toys. Personally, as a Buddhist, this is a perfect stim toy for me. So even if I am clicking away, I might well not be doing mantras. I may well just be bringing myself back down to an even keel. So how then do we become more inclusive for our sibling disabled and ND practitioners? Within Buddhist teachings offered by our venerable teachers and spiritual ancestors, we're so fortunate to have concrete practices that are interwoven with inclusivity, where we may find support to build increased awareness within our sanghas and into our wider world communities. Though I have found it challenging to overtly find the term inclusivity within the sutras and commentaries. Maybe you could offer some suggestions or some guidance for myself in the Q&R later on. Personally, I feel very fortunate to have found dear Thai, Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh. Thai is an affectionate word for teacher. His Dharma sharing on the nature of interbeing and on how they are reflected within the teachings themselves has become a great support. I feel this offers a lens to look more deeply into the Buddha's teachings, enabling us to find the inclusiveness within the Buddha's path. These have been offered as a common thread through the IQBC offerings this year. For example, the Four Noble Truths, where there is suffering in the world. We're all subject to suffering in some way. There's a way from that suffering, and the Noble Eightfold Path is the way. I would also like to offer that for some, there is a starkness within the Four Noble Truths. And in my experience, it's been and can be quite off-putting at times. But from a Buddhist point of view, if there is suffering, the opposite also needs to exist. For this reason, I sometimes enjoy offering the Four Noble Truths as there is happiness in the world. We are all subject to happiness. There is a way to happiness, and the Noble Eightfold Path is the way. This way, I have found that some people can become more receptive to the teachings offered. That being said, I do not wish to turn this into a teaching on those deep subjects and practices, although I would like to expand on a few points from the Noble Eightfold Path and one from the Paramitas. Excuse me. So, with the Noble Eightfold Path, primarily looking at right view, right thinking, right speech, and right action. Just to expand a little bit on these aspects of this beautiful teaching and practice. I feel that we could practice them in the usual form, i.e. listing them, though this may not always be appropriate or right for the situation or experience that we find ourselves in. When this comes into play, this is where we need to practice skillful means, which can be supported by right view and right thinking. You see what I did there? So right view can be underpinned by building upon our experience and our knowledge, being open to offerings from practitioners within the disabled and neurodiverse communities. We could approach this by connecting with affinity groups and sanghas as an ally or a participant, or taking in learning opportunities from talks such as this. Or at the end of this talk, I will offer a few links and suggestions for further reading to help start our self-exploration on the subject, if you wish to do so. Right thinking. This is another part of the Noble Eightfold Path that is very expansive, and this could take its own workshop in its own right. So for this, I would just like to offer a mantra that my teacher has offered. And all it is, are you sure? This, for me, instigates that aspect of the Noble Eightfold Path. Is it right thinking? So, moving on. Right speech. In today's environment, we need to be ever more aware of the language that we are using within our rainbow community and within the wider communities. Um, Thankfully, within the rainbow community, we seem to be uh, very well versed in this practice of taking care of our speech, though it's always evolving and becoming hopefully more inclusive. Also, speaking as clearly as possible from the needs of our communities and of individuals at any given moment. So, sorry, excuse me. Let me just. There. So, mindfully taking care of the language that we use within the disabled and ND environment. We avoid using terms such as crippled, handicapped, challenged, retarded, which I know that has been a popular term in the US at times. But even things such as special needs, differently abled, which was a term that sort of came up around 10 years ago, but then was increasingly seen as and used as a derogatory term. So, if unsure, best to communicate in a neutral language. And again, we may ask the person how they wish to be addressed, similar to pronouns, etc. More phrases that are acceptable are a person with disability or a person that has tailored assistance. And we can change these interchangeably depending on the situation we find ourselves in. So, right action. I feel that we should aspire to implement supportive and inclusive behaviours within our own actions or nurturing into being with fellow practitioners. Also looking to kindle opportunities where it may create a more supportive physical practice environment for all. So in the real world, ramps always bring me pleasure when I come to a Sangha meeting. But hearing loops and this sort of thing, correct lighting, and these are very small insights into aspects of the Noble Eightfold Path that I feel help support the ND community and the disabled community, but also help to support our own practices as well. And as with all the Buddha's teachings, that these are always interconnected with the other aspects of the Noble Eightfold Path, so that of right diligence, right concentration, right livelihood, etc. So moving on to where else I found that these can be supported within the Buddhist teachings. The aspects of equanimity or kshanti and inclusiveness, upeksha or upekkha in Pali. Now, within the third of the 6 parameters, it is generally known as patience or forbearance within the Buddhist teachings. However, in Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh's book, Heart of the Buddhist Teachings, he describes it as the third petal of inclusiveness. He goes on to say, inclusiveness is the capacity to receive, embrace, and Kshanti is often translated as patience or forbearance, but I believe inclusiveness better conveys the Buddha's teachings. When we practice inclusiveness, we don't have to suffer or forbear, even when we have to embrace suffering and injustice. The other person says or does something that makes us angry. They inflict on us some kind of injustice. But if our heart is large enough, we do not suffer. Now, the third petal that he's speaking of there is in relation to the 5 mindfulness trainings or precepts within the Plum Village tradition. In the previous quote, Thai offers a description of the third paramita as the capacity to bear and transform pain inflicted upon you by your enemies and also by those who you love. This personally I've added to include illness and disability. So other than that, where did I find the inclusivity mentioned? Inclusivity is also within the Brahma Viharas, as so skillfully and eloquently offered by Kyle, Ray, May, Thomas, and Anna, also from J. Mark's insightful offerings here on the IQBC 23. We may also find inclusivity as taught in the 7 factors of awakening, as well as offered as a paramita, i.e. the 6 perfections of which we just spoke upon. So initially, this path of offering inclusiveness, I feel, begins by extending and experiencing inclusiveness to and for oneself. In the same vein, Thai conveyed to offer peace, you need to be peace. I say to offer inclusiveness, you need to be inclusiveness. The same is true for accessibility, all of which to me, I find a work in progress. I feel this can be experienced moment by moment as internal inclusivity. Challenges arise and gently pass. As with many of Buddha's teachings, the paramitas are interwoven and inter-are with the other 5 offered by the Buddha, that of Dana Paramita, giving, offering generosity, Shila Paramita, precepts or mindfulness trainings, i.e. the 3rd petal, Kshanti Paramita, inclusiveness, patience, forbearance, Vihara Paramita, diligence and energy, Dhyana Paramita, meditation, and Prajna Paramita, great wisdom and insight. This interbeing and interwovenness, I find, especially connects to Dana Paramita and the Prajna Paramita, or the personal favorite for me when there is a sustained effort. Though with my alphabetical spicy mind, I do find that difficult at sometimes. But as mentioned, I'm not a Dharma teacher, so I will not expand on them anymore, but you are invited to explore them for yourselves. So where does this leave us now? For me, I feel it brings us to a point of realization in that we have the opportunity to hold inclusiveness at the tip of our flame of awareness as part of our moment-by-moment practice when looking deeply into how we may support our fellow practitioners. When we observe deeply into the practices offered by the Buddha and our venerable teachers, we can see the undercurrent of inclusiveness, its interbeing nature of inclusiveness within all aspects of our practice. We can rely on our diligence in our practice, as it is up to us to bring forward the lens of inclusiveness so that we may see how we can be cognizant of another person's supportive requirements, so that we may enjoy our practice together. The recognition of impermanence shows that at any given moment, it could be you or your loved one that is in need of inclusive practice and support due to a life-changing episode or accident. So I'd like to just offer a quote here from my teacher. And they say, according to the teachings of the Buddha, everyone has the seed of equanimity, of non-discrimination within themselves. If we can touch that seed in ourselves, the wisdom of non-discrimination will manifest, nor do we suffer or make the others suffer. So with this in mind, I compiled a inclusive seed, or a primer, so that I may learn to support people within the Mahasangha, both online and in real life environments, from which I will just now offer 2 to 3 examples. And I will offer the link to this primer later on after the talk, if you would like. And also a link to a Plum Village primer on ableism and disability within the Buddhist communities. So from the online inclusive primer, there are points that I've brought forward from my own experience of offering online meditations and talks, but also my own experience as a participant within online environments and face-to-face environments within Buddhist communities and sanghas around my local area. So a couple of those points could be offering any screen sharings that we have within clear text, clear and legible text, for practitioners within the neurodiverse communities. There are free fonts online as well. That one is called Open Dyslexia or Open Dyslexic. So any handouts that we offer or online presentations, we could pop the text in these fonts just to assist. With this in mind also, that we, in the online environment, especially in Zoom, we have the closed captions options or transcript options. We can also offer countdown cues. So this helps people within ADHD, within autism, and within many other different neurodiversities to prepare themselves for a session ending, be that an online talk, or even I've started to include it within meditations. Now this is similar to having like a visual timetable. We can say, okay, right, I'm ready for a transition now into something else, rather than being an abrupt cut-off. There's something that I've also observed is that people may need to use stim tools, as we've spoken of earlier, to help them deal with a situation that, or an experience they're having at home with the talk. And now, from a person within this environment, it's quite difficult to do something with, but it can just raise our attentions that this person may be becoming overstimulated. They may have been triggered by something that we've said, and we can then offer them the option, either by direct chat within this environment, that they may like to turn their camera off. This invitation can also be offered in the housework at the beginning of a talk. So also something that I found useful is leaving the webinar or the meeting open for a few minutes after, so that people can access and copy down text relevant in the chat, but also it gives this space of decompression for the participants. So that's a lot. So I'd just like to offer a bell for a moment so that we can just come back to our breath, and then I'll expand a little bit more. So if we just like to come back to our breathing, find our comfortable place again. So why is this shining a light needed on to support our affiliate communities, especially within the neurodiverse and disabled areas? Being online within the environment and the tradition I was sort of shone a light on myself as being neurodiverse, which then opened up conversations from other practitioners around the world within my tradition, but also within other Buddhist traditions. And the examples that I'd like to offer today are from different traditions around the world. The first of those was with a monastic who had gone through noviceship and was around, well, coming up to 2 years into their monastic practice. Excuse me 1 minute. I have a furry friend that's found something they shouldn't be chewing. There we go. Okay. So yes. So the story is, it was offered to me by this person, was that they had managed to go through noviceship and reached so far within their monastic practice as a person that shares a body with autism, with high functioning, as they deemed it and described it. Now, within their mentorship, a person who was acting as their mentors gaslit them, really, and called them out on the fact that they shouldn't be needing labels. They should be operating and practicing from a point of silentness and emptiness. This was very upsetting to the person involved and the monastic involved, into such an extent that they ended up disrobing. And since then, they've actually left that tradition. They're not even practicing it as a lay practitioner. And I'm not so sure. I've sort of lost contact with them, so I'm not so sure that they're actually even a practicing Buddhist now. Another example is that of a monastic who after a year of consulting with their teachers, was given basically a leave of absence so that they could go away and find further support, all the while retaining being a monastic within that tradition. Now, sadly, that person took their own life 4 months ago. They were, although as soon as they left the monastic order in a physical form, they were basically cut off with support. Very little support came through for them. Now, these are, I understand, two quite extreme examples of where I feel that this support is needed and needs to be implemented. And I can't think of a better environment than with my rainbow siblings, as who very much understand struggle within the wider world and the necessity for support and inclusiveness.